Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy. I have Kieran Collins with me tonight. Rory and James are elsewhere. We'll have them on next week. Kieran, how are things?
Good, Mark, yourself?
Very good, very good. Yeah, I suppose tonight we'll kind of review the Allianz Hurling League semi-finals in Division One. Also look at the relegation final that took place in Navan as well, between Antrim and Offaly, and maybe have a little look in terms of some intercounty squad selections, maybe specifically around Limerick under-20s, and also Galway have unveiled a 34-plus man squad that you think might reclaim Liam McCarthy. So maybe we kind of start off first. Kieran, I know you were down in Nolan Park. You're based in Wexford. Confidence was high with Wexford heading into that match against Waterford, but my God, I did not see that scoreline coming whatsoever, given our comments last week in terms of the two Munster teams and thinking that might be a few commitments issues. My God, Waterford fairly squashed that in the head fairly early, didn't they?
Absolutely. Jesus. It's hard to know, is it a case Waterford were really good or was it just Wexford were very bad? I've looking at it like you can pick a lot of weaknesses out in the Wexford performance. Straight off, I was just watching the warm up. Like I love watching teams warm up, and just Waterford had such an emphasis in the drills they were doing on like running with guys off the shoulder and passing and tackling all contact, similar to what Limerick would do. And you look at Wexford and it's kind of, I call it old fashioned, like running up and down lines, passing balls, but I think Waterford, you can see what they're doing in training, and what they did during the match. It was like a carbon copy of what drills they had performed on the warm-up. Very impressive. The forwards, the movement in the forwards is just unbelievable to watch them. Now I think it was made very easy by Wexford. So first thing I want to look at is like the puckouts.
Yeah. Like
Wexford's puckouts, I think they started off, they put them all along. They didn't work. They didn't win any of their own puckouts. And then I think the first one they might have put short was for Ozzy's goal.
Yeah.
Now where Mark Fanning was putting, there was two mistakes. I think Foley was static, he should have been moving towards the ball. But Fanning trying to put a pass to the half back line, a pass like that, it's deadly. Ozzy saw it, he read it well, he intercepted it, and he had a few yards on Foley, and there was no catching him. But the surprising thing was, no one came to meet him. No one made him earn to goal. So the defending was very loose. Waterford's puckouts in the first half, every puckout was short, bar one long one. Strangely, Wexford's full forward line kind of sat on the 40 and didn't push him at any stage. They let him have it. They let the full back line have it. And I see Cork do the same. But they give all the time in the world. The Waterford full back line had all. They could walk out with the ball. And all they were doing was waiting for the Wexford or the Waterford forwards to make a run into space, and the ball was put in there. The ball delivery was exquisite. If they had to work through the lines, they worked through the line. But majority of the time, it was playing into space, and there was runners off the shoulder, and that's how they just ran at Wexford from the start. But I just don't get why teams, and Cork, as I said, do it as well, that they don't push up, and maybe it'll force them to go along, and it's a 50-50 ball then. But when you were giving them possession and not contesting it, it was a highlight on the Sunday game as well with Cork. I can't understand why teams are doing that.
Yeah, it'll certainly burn these teams going down the stretch, Kieran, as you say. An awful lot of full back line now are good distributors of the ball. They'll run out with the ball. They'll make the right call. They'll have the player overlap. But now these cornerbacks now are coming up the pitch 50, 60, 70 metres. They're creating massive overlaps. I think they've followed the Limerick template and probably enhanced it a little bit. Yeah, I noticed that with Cork on Saturday night as well, but particularly Wexford. I thought Wexford were just literally stuck to the ground. The first kind of real kind of dry weather summer day that we had. And I think their middle third got absolutely routed, as you said, Kieran. And It was just the support lines, even for the Jack Fagan point, the first point, Ozzy Gleeson scores 2-3. Now, it's marred by the red card at the end, but my God, what a sideline cut for the first score. He literally spots Fagan running from deep. Fagan doesn't have to break stride. Hits over a point, and then it's literally setting the tone. It's asking the question of the Wexford, midfield and half forward line. What are you going to do here on the running lines? And just simply didn't have any response. There wasn't even a sweeper. There was no alterations I could see here, Kieran. It literally was one-way traffic. which for Darragh Egan and management, I'd say has to be very worrying here.
Yeah, and the defending was very loose as well. There was like standing off. Like if you have a man running towards your goal, I think the first thing you need to do is get a man to close him down or close the space off. That didn't happen. Like you look at all 5 goals, it was the defensive mistakes. It wasn't that it was a touch of class. Like they could have been stopped, or they could have been a fair effort to stop. Like the first goal, okay, it was a mix up between the goalkeeper and Paddy Foley. Ozzy intercepted it. He had a few yards on Foley by then. There was no stopping him. But Simon Donoghue or Liam Ryan never actually came out to meet Gleeson to try and stop his run. But if you compare that to the other end, when on the odd occasion Roy O'Connor did break inside, the Wexford or Waterford cornerbacks were straight around. They weren't fouling, but just hold them up. And straight away, Tyke de Burker was in support. So you had 2 defenders wrapped around him. He was going nowhere. So they're likely he was going to foul the ball by overcarrying, or so compare that to what Wexford were doing. They were just standing off. Like that was the first goal. The second goal, I don't remember, Desi, I think, got the ball in the wing. Simon Donoghue, that was his man. He had to go to him. But Paddy Foley also went with him. So the 2 Wexford defenders went for Desi, but left Ozzy Gleeson behind him unmarked. Desi played the ball over the 2 into Ozzy, the clean road. There was no one in front of him. So that's junior B defending in my eyes. That should not happen. Is it a case then that's why Davy did play a sweeper all the time, and Wexford aren't good enough defensively to go mano-mano? The third goal, they're all pretty much the same. Like I think Callum Lyons made a long run up the middle of the field. Again, no one came to close him down. Remember the long sweeping pass? It was over Donoghue and O'Keefe, and leaving Desi Hutchinson unmarked. Like it's criminal defending. So the caliber of Ozzy Gleeson and Desi Hutchinson being left unmarked inside the 21, like you're asking for trouble. I think the same as well for Prendergast's goal. Kieran, remember, he made a run up the sideline. It was questioned if the ball was in or out. As I saw in the warm-up drills, Mikey Kiley ran on his shoulder. Minute opposition player came, ball was laid off. He continued to run in, pass inside again. Prendergast straight in on goal. No one came to meet him or close him off. And then the last goal, Hanlon. Okay, it was a mistake, which I suppose can be easily made. It was his ball. He fumbled it. Shane Bennett and beat him for pace. And Simon Donoghue came out. He kind of resisted, and then he came to him. And it was just a half-arse of a challenge, what I call it. And he fell off him. There was no. It was. I wouldn't even call it a challenge. But the thing is, for me, I think Liam Ryan is possibly too loose in there. Like of all 5 goals, where was Liam Ryan? He was not on. In front protecting the house. He was out. I think he goes out too far sometimes. It's a specialised position. I think you need to stay in around the house or thereabouts. I think Wexford have a pace issue at the back as well. I think Hanlon was caught for pace. Yeah, I think this. If you were Egan, you'd be looking ahead, going, there's trouble ahead. Like if this is where they're defending, they're going to have to send either personnel or just go with a sweeper full time to counteract it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bit difficult though. I think Kieran for Darragh Egan now. He's 3 weeks out from first round game against Galway down in Chadwick Park. I mean, to start stopping and changing formations and systems, but I think you brought up an awful lot of good points there. I mean, to me, Wexford just looked rattled, completely rattled from the opening salve and never really recovered. And I'd even go with the attacking shots selection as well. Rory Connor has been prolific. How many times did we see actually Rory Connor on the sideline? Literally against 3 against 1. Like there was no quality ball going into Rory at all. And when he did get ball, as you say, the cornerbacks, Tyke de Burker, swarmed him, literally turnover ball, bang, no real support there. I suppose more genuine worries as well. I suppose Conor McDonald did go off, kind of looked like not a great injury really coming off.
I think the news actually is he will be okay. It's not as bad as they thought, or what it might have looked at. So I think he'll be okay for championship.
Yeah, but as head full forward line is not even the issue here. I think it's really that middle third. I think, Kieran, you've kind of rightly pointed out here that you're not going to win too many championship games if your middle third is getting absolutely routed like that. And I think the more disappointing thing for Egan was, I think for most of these goals, the player overlap. Where was the track and runners? Where were the defensive, the game management? We mentioned about Waterford against Tip there a few weeks ago, where Waterford made in-game adjustments. and then completely nullified Breen and a few of the other Tipperary half-forward line and literally made a kind of game-winning charge just before half-time. We didn't really see any of that with Wexford, which I think we went into last week thinking, geez, Wexford have a genuine opportunity here, but how to stock value to plummet after a result like that, I think it does raise a few questions. And I think Darragh Egan will really see his true credentials here as a manager, how he boosts the side up, because this is the first defeat in the league. And what a heavy loss as well to kind of regroup the charges. Heading into Galway, I'd say Galway were probably looking on saying, geez, lads, we might have half a chance here, just given that performance.
Yeah, and surprisingly, like all along we were seeing him working the ball in, and that's what Rory O'Connor was doing as well as he was. But against Waterford, like it was like they'd worked the ball as far as midfield and they were just taking pot shots from distance. You know, like they'd 18 wides, and I'd say a majority of them wides were from out near the halfway line. You know,
Oh, yeah.
Damien Reck had taken a few, D. O'Keefe, just ones that I remember. You know, like things have to go well for you if you're going to score there from that distance and be in contention, win the game. You know, I think for Wexford to win games, they're going to need goals, and the supply of ball in was like even Roy O'Connor was struggling to get in the ball. You know, and he was playing out the field a bit. Like there was, to be fair to Conor McDonald and Oisin Pepper, like Oisin Pepper didn't see any ball, but there was no ball going in. You know, so it was like Wexford worked it up as far as midfield, and once he got it that far, they were just happy to have a shot. You know, very little ball actually went in. So now, in saying that they weren't full strength, okay, they were very close to it, but I think Colin Flood will start wing back. I think he's had a good league campaign. He's been a scoring wing back, and he's got pace, so he up and down. I think Damien Reck's best position by far, and he started cornerback, but when he came out to wing back, I think he was Wexford's best player, I think, by far. He had a very good game when he came out to wing back. His brother Shane, actually, he's out injured at the minute. I think the word is not too good. He's a hamstring tear, so it's there's no time limit on it yet, but I don't think he's going to be back for early championship anyway. I think he's a huge loss because he's actually probably only Wexford's real like man marker defender, like, you know. Yeah, Liam Ryan, Matt O'Hanlon, like I said it earlier, like there is a pace issue there with him. Yeah, it's concerning, I suppose. Really, I think what you possible half back line you'll see is Conal Flood, Paddy Foley centre back, and Damien Reck. They could be solid, but I think it's a small half back line in hurling these days, you know, so they come up against Galway or Limerick and they could struggle.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll see a sweeper back there, Kieran. I know this is kind of back to Davy Fitt's tactics. I know Darrow is very much 15 on 15, but you're giving into the first round of the championship a key game against Galway. Can't really win. You can't really lose your home games. Would you consider bringing back someone like O'Keefe back into a sweeper role, or maybe to kind of shore up the defence a little bit, particularly between that centre half back and full back line?
I think you might be left with no option. Yeah, I think you might be left with no option. I think, yeah, D. O'Keefe played very deep at stages. They even touched on the Sunday game where they were kind of in and out of a sweeper system, you know, so I think they're going to have to just probably possibly go with one and stay with it, like, you know. It probably won't take much adjustment. They're used to playing that system, so I don't think it's going to be, you know, something that's going to be alien to them. But I think against the likes of Galway, Dublin, Kilkenny, you know, I think going on the weekend, yeah, they probably will have to play a sweeper.
Yeah, I just thought with Wexford as well, the energy levels just did seem quite low. I don't know, maybe the schedule, maybe having, well, I mean, against Cork, that was kind of a marquee win, you know, particularly to round out the regular season. But I just thought the energy levels were just a little bit low. But I think Waterford were completely on it. I think bouncing back after that Kilkenny loss in the last regular season game, really. And I mean, it has to be all good for Waterford. Geez, the goal threat they have now, Kieran. I mean, it's probably a critique of theirs with Liam Cal that they weren't creating much goal chances or scoring many. But my God, they scored 5 goals again, you know. When you consider their league campaign here, Jesus, how many goals have they scored? Kind of 28, 29 goals during the league. Might be standard corrected there, but I mean, if you have Desi Hutchinson, if Ozzie Gleeson can maybe stay out of the disciplinary stuff, maybe Bennett as well inside full forward, Curran as well. Geez, that's a potent full forward line there that'll really strike the fear of God into many intercounty full back lines in this spring and summer.
Yeah, and if you look at the starting team from Sunday, like the players that hadn't started. Stephen Bennett, Jamie Barron,
And
Prunty. These lads are going to walk onto that team, but the players that are playing in their positions look every bit as comfortable as Barron and Prunty and Stephen Bennett. Now, there is a lot of speculation about Bennett's injury, and I think he will be a huge loss because I think he's had an unbelievable league to date. But they've really got a strong panel, and obviously we all know with the round robin coming, the strong panel is going to be called upon day or week in, week out, so it's needed. I think the after their attacking threat is there for all to see, but I think defensively as well they're sound. And I think when you're comparing Waterford to Cork, I think we'll touch on Cork in a few minutes, but I think Waterford are the complete. I think if Limerick are to perform to the heights they did over the last few years, I think Waterford are going to be the team that's closest to them because there's question marks over Cork's defence. But I think Waterford from 1 to 15, I think they have it right.
I completely agree with you, Kieran. I think that's us bench as well. As you said, you've named off 3 or 4 kind of regular starters, even all-stars there, like Barron, Prunty. Jesus. Liam Cahill, Michael Bevins, those training sessions, AFB games are going to be absolutely phenomenal now to see who even gets into a league final panel, and then even Tipperary in the first round. I mean, it's set up so well for Waterford. You mentioned it as well, Kieran, start the podcast. It's always been a good, feel-good vibe about Waterford this year, particularly with Ballygunner and their kind of campaign to All-Ireland Club Glory. It really has kind of manifested itself in this Waterford side. They seem to have evolved, and I think it's a fascinating battle here with Cork. I suppose we can get to Cork as well here, Kieran. In Park Keeve, the crowd, I believe it was around 19,000.
Yeah,
down in Park Keeve, which is a phenomenal crowd for a semi-final, but it doesn't that go to show just in terms of the Cork public and their vehement support of the senior hurling team under Kieran Kingston. I thought it was a quality game between themselves and Kilkenny, and we said last week that it was really a free hit for Kilkenny, given no disrespect to Westmeath and Laois, that they had no excuses here, that they would go all out. And I mean, a good start for Kilkenny, but my God, I thought Cork in the second half, the bench and the run game absolutely destroyed Kilkenny, and were the winners in the end.
Yeah, the game actually, Kilkenny reminded me back to the game against Limerick in 2019, the way they started. They came out of the traps hot. Everything did right. Every ball went to hand. They did it at pace. And for the first 20-25 minutes, I think they blew Cork away. I don't think Cork were expecting that. I think they've kind of showed how to close down Cork. If you're to stop Cork attacking, you need to stop them at source. So when you've runners and I think actually when Tim O'Mahony came on in the second half, I think he was he made a huge difference going forward. It starts from the guys like him, Dara Fitzgibbon, these guys running at pace with fellas off the shoulder, working through the lines, they are going to be hard to stop. But I think Kilkenny kind of showed how you do that. They're in their face. Anything that moved, they hit. The referee was letting it go, so they took it to the advantage. I was impressed with Kilkenny for the first half especially. I think it'll stand him. That game will stand him. And I think Cody will be happy overall. Looking back at the league, I think would have been a good league campaign for Kilkenny. I think going into Leinster, I think for me, they have to be favourites to win Leinster.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I suppose the way Cork responded in the second half, but I suppose first half wise for Kilkenny, they did start very well. I thought, they really did front up very well, didn't they? Kieran, 1 to 15, gave the Cork backline no platform to create the run game. The hits were in. Kieran, Billy Ryan, they were pretty prominent, I thought, in terms of.
Cody had a great game as well. And
yeah,
Billy,
4 points.
4 points,
yeah. Was very prominent. Murphy as well around that midfield area had kind of came out, was providing some gorgeous ball into the inside for the forward line. And I think it did expose maybe Mark Coleman again defensively, particularly on 1 or 2 kind of occasions, particularly on the first goal particularly. He seemed to be kind of caught for a little bit of pace for the lead up to the first goal. But
I also think as well, I think Dara O'Leary has been caught. I think looking back at it, he's been caught 2 or 3 times over the last few games, and and look, and not being hard is a specialised position, and he's a young lad, but I don't know, seemingly he's going to be missing for the weekend. He picked up a knock, so will they stick with him or will they twist? And I know Downey has played there, Mellerick has played there a few games this year. I think to me it'll be worrying if you're getting caught in the league 2 or 3 times over. Like, what are the chances of this happening when it comes to the championship? Defensively, I still have question marks over Cork. Their puck out defence, which I think was highlighted, similar to Wexford, but they're holding, like, the Kilkenny full back line, or, they could walk out with the ball at their own pace. Cork had no intention of contesting them, so they held. But once a good pass was given, it was highlighted a few occasions where they were beaten, and it led. But Kilkenny went down the field and scored a point. I think the Coleman situation, I think it really will have to be a well-oiled machine to work. So when you have Coleman stepping out of centre back, having, let's say, if Kieran Joyce is playing midfield or wing back, having to step over, you're talking the whole unit having to move around. But whatever about the wing back having to cover in where it's lateral, but if you have a midfielder to step back, it's not as easy. So I think there's no sign to say that they're going to change at this stage. But I think if that is the case, have Cork really learned from last year then, is what I'm going to say, because both times that Cian Lynch went up against Mark Coleman, I think he really highlighted that, it's an area Cork should be looking at, but they've stuck with it, and all signs are they are going to stick with it. But I think when you have question marks over your 3 and 6, it's going to be a big ask to win All Ireland.
Certainly. I think Mallory and also Joyce, I think they're the focal points here. If any one of them goes down with an injury during this championship, I think Cork are in serious trouble, because I don't see anything from a squad bench perspective to fulfil that role. I thought Joy's second half, Kieran, was absolutely unbelievable. I thought he was a turnover machine. His pace, his fitness, launching attacks, the run game, everything else. And like Mellerick is a very well-drilled player as well in terms of that system. But as I say, I think the fullback situation, speaking to a few Cork lads, they don't even think I think there's a fullback problem here, that they reckon that Downey will be a wing back. They've Dara inside and fullback, but I think quality teams will expose that. And I would think Limerick should be doing due diligence on that, exploiting Gallan one-on-one inside, or, even Cian Lynch inside. I think it's a very sore point there, because there are vulnerabilities there. Kilkenny certainly exposed it. And I think coming into this weekend, Kieran, with Waterford, with a potent full forward line, like Desi Hutchinson, his movement inside, if early ball goes in there, I think it would be very interesting to see. I mean, you don't have that much time from a Cork perspective to really be tinkering around defensively now. If there is, dare I say, if Waterford do go on a bit of a scoring spree here in the inside full forward line, there's no time left.
No, I think it'll be definitely a real test for them going into the championship. I think, if they can hold tough on Waterford's attack, but I suppose huge question marks, and only the next few weeks will tell us. Was really impressed as well. Dara Fitzgibbon really back to form of the last few years. Unbelievable. And our Alan Connolly, Jesus, these young lads are coming out. Like, think back to this time last year, all the talk was for Jack O'Connor. Now Jack O'Connor can't even make the team. Alan Connolly seems to have, come in there, and I'd say all going well for him. I think he has a starting jersey come championship. It's gone to the stage even where you're kind of looking to go, is Horgan even safe in the team? He didn't have a good game last week. Okay, 9 points, but 8 of them are from place balls. There's a lot of pressure on there in that forward unit, and there's serious selection issues there for Kingston. But I think the player for me of the league for Cork has been Lahan. I think he's just stepped back in. He's been unbelievable.
Been a complete resurgence, hasn't it? I mean, he took 2 years out back with Middleton, playing superb club hurling, and then comes back in more fresh, more perspective on things, and really is performing. Maybe he's not putting as much pressure as he was putting himself under, I think, because this guy is is the prodigal hurling god down there, particularly in his young days. He was being heralded about 10 years ago, and I think maybe he put a little bit too much pressure on himself. He's come back in, breath of fresh air. I think Connolly as well. Lovely strike of a ball, really good physicality, work rate. I thought the ruthlessness of Kingston in the sideline. He hauled off Horgan and he hauled off his son Shane. Literally said the work rate wasn't up to it, and he hauled both of them off before the 68th minute, which I thought was a pretty telling statement for both of those guys, that they're not guaranteed their game time even for a league final. So it's kind of evenly poised, I think, there. But I think Fitzgibbon as well from Charleville is just, I don't think we saw the true Dara Fitzgibbon last year, to be perfectly fair. He was kind of struggling. Yeah. But I think, he's pace-wise. My God, is there anyone better in full flow? His goal was phenomenal. That really kind of secured the win. But I thought from Cork, from maybe 30 minutes out, were getting well on top in the half-back line. They were launching an awful lot of attacks from deep. Kilkenny were just not able to hold it. I will point again to Kilkenny subs bench. They only used 3 subs on the night.
Yeah.
Richie Reid only came on with 4 minutes to go. What's that all about, to be perfectly fair? Now, they're expecting TJ Reid to maybe come back in, but for, a game in a balance, wouldn't you think you'd throw maybe a few bodies on to kind of freshen it up, gain a bit of energy? But to me, it's still underlying issues here with Cody and maybe the management staff. That do they have confidence here in terms of the 4th, 5th, 6th guy coming in? I don't think they do.
Yeah, it's not the first time, it's not the first game this year where we've kind of noted that. And going into a round robin, we know the most important thing is your squad. It's not your 15, it's your starters and then your finishers. But also TJ, I know they have the easier route, I suppose, to have Westmeath and Laois first 2 games. But even TJ, to get game time into him, before they face into, I think, Galway, Dublin, Wexford, in that order. Similar to Lee Chin for Wexford, that was his first, I think, the word I heard, he's only back training the last 3 weeks, so you could see it in him. He hadn't much hurling done when he came on the other day. He did make an impact, and he always will make an impact, but these guys need to get hurled into him. But yeah, it's an interesting point to note.
Exactly. I suppose kind of Lee Chin's cameo. I mean, probably Darren Fitzgibbon or Dara Egan is probably thinking now maybe he had the luxury maybe kind of keeping Lee Chin in reserve. I think he's probably having to push pretty hard on Lee Chin now to kind of get into full hurling mode in the next few weeks ahead of the Galway match, because certainly they need a bit of physicality in that 40, don't they? Just to kind of win primary balls of possession here and
the half hour line is light in my eyes. You saw it in the first probably 5-6 puckouts. They went long and didn't win any of them, so I think even there for a ball winning capacity. But the word with Chin is that it is a hamstring issue he has that needs to be operated on, and I think they'll probably be minding up to now. Can they rely on him for the whole season? Time will tell, I suppose.
Exactly. Now, I know last week when we had all the lads on, we were kind of commenting about the Munster teams not really kind of maybe fully committing to this semi-final, but I suppose it'd be fair to say, Kieran, it's a National League title. Both lads are all in, are they? I think so. Are off?
I think you have to at this stage.
Yeah.
It can be a good or bad thing preparation-wise for championship. The fear would be if you pick up any injuries to your players that you need on the field. But I think when you're in a final, silverware there for the taking, I think they will go for it. We all know the downside to the league setup this year and the final being so close to championship. I think that will probably be addressed next year. I think there does need to be more. I think at least 3 weeks between a league final and start championship. I think really there should have been no semi-finals and just have the winner of Group 1A and 1B in the final. I think that might be a better approach. But I think a real battle coming up, and people have them second and third teams in the country behind Limerick. Okay, Limerick are yet to show anything, but on form this year, they're the best 2 teams in the country.
I think it's very much dangerous talk, isn't it, regarding Limerick, that everyone's still ranking Limerick number 1. I mean, they haven't really shown their hand here. We won't really know anything about Limerick until Easter weekend down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh against Cork, and people are expecting Limerick to turn it on against Cork. And I mean, imagine here for Limerick, I mean, if they didn't have to know already to get their performances up to the optimum, Cork Waterford in the National Hurling League final, one of them is going to win this Saturday night. It's a massive boost to the hurling senior programs there for either. I mean, can you imagine with Waterford, more of a momentum after Ballygunner winning an All-Ireland club? Same with Cork, with the under-8 success they could potentially win here. I think Limerick have it all to do here, Kieran, to be perfectly frank. I'm kind of seeing the betting odds and stuff, and it's not really adding up for me right now. I mean, a loss for Limerick, potentially in Cork, puts them into a massive hole here, really, when you consider Waterford the following week in the US Gaelic grounds, really.
I don't think the draw has been that favourable to them. 2 weeks in a row. The 2 teams that are being classed as your closest rivals, So the only thing I will say for the losing team, it's a short period to championship then, trying to regain a bit of confidence after a loss. You probably only have a week to work on anything that might have gone wrong. You know, the week before the championship match, you're not going to do any hard training. You know, so I suppose it can be looked at from both ways. Obviously, yes, if you win and everyone comes through unscathed, then yeah, everything's going great. But I think for the team who does lose, you know, it's a short time to pick yourself up and face, and it's a test in, you know, 6 weeks. You know, Munster teams 4 games, Leinster teams 5 games, 6 weeks. So, you know, I think for the winner, you know, obviously it'll be easier, but the losing team, it will be a negative going into championship.
I completely agree, and I think if you're a strength and conditioning coach of any of these Munster sides right now, your money is where your mouth is right now. What have you done in terms of, have you got it spot on in terms of peaking now for the next 4 to 5 weeks, or have you done maybe a Galway on it and peaked too soon from last year, turned flat performances in championships? So I think that'll be a fascinating, kind of intriguing kind of battle. And I mean, not writing off Limerick here by any stretch of the imagination here, ladies and gentlemen, but again, it's going to be a fascinating watch here. Kieran, can we get a prediction from you on the Cork Waterford game? I'm really looking forward to it on Saturday night. Thurles, if it's nice weather like it has been, we should be in for a very high scoring game.
I think so, yeah. Two real attacking teams. Both teams probably will be missing one or two. As I say, Darragh Leary missing. I read earlier he's going to be definitely missing for the game. Yeah. There's a question mark over Tim O'Mahony, but I think they're expecting him to start or be available. Obviously, Waterford are going to be without Ozzie Gleeson. I go back on what I said earlier. I think Waterford are the complete unit of the two teams. I think they have it up front. They have it defensively. They have if one player isn't performing, they have players on the bench who are just as good. I still have question marks. I'm open to be proven wrong. I have serious question marks over Cork's defence, and based on that, I think Waterford.
I'm hesitantly agreeing with you here, Kieran. I think this will be a very high-scoring game. I think we're going to see both teams really kind of do battle and really kind of take strips out of each other, to be perfectly fair. I wouldn't be all surprised if this went extra time, which may be a worst-case scenario for both teams here, to be fair, because I think this is such a huge game. Maybe last week's semi-final, if you lost the semi-final, then fair enough. But this is a national competition final. And for both of these hurling teams and counties, there's been a bit of a famine in terms of winning silverware at this level. So I think everything is going to be fully committed to this. I would agree with you here, Kieran. I think Waterford they're on the road a little bit now. I think they really need to strike now. So Gleeson being out is a bit of a blow, but I still think, as you say, there's people there to come in. Darragh Lyons, guys like that, Jack Fagan, Jack Montgomery, guys like that, we're going to step up. Kieran, I'm delighted to see. I think he's a phenomenal hurler. You know, he's taking the frees on now, stuff like that. I think he provides an awful lot of good open play options for Waterford. I think it's just going to be fascinating, the run game between the two teams. Who's going to establish it in the half-back line to set the platform? I think it's going to ebb and flow. I think Waterford
can do. There's nowhere they can go. But I think, you know, compare that to Coleman. He's brilliant going forward, but he doesn't offer the same qualities defensively. But when you have players of Waterford standard running at you, your defensive unit needs to be at its best. Qualities defensively. But when you have players of Waterford standard running at you, your defensive unit needs to be at its best.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Kieran. I think this Cork backline rotation, it is going to be maybe exposed this weekend. You just never know. But I think for both managers, the hope will be that they don't have suspensions or maybe injuries. I think injuries might be the more primary concern here, because you have no turnaround time, as you say, Kieran. But I think really looking forward to that on Saturday night. I suppose we can go to the relegation final, because that was definitely one where we knew that both teams were going to go all out for. And I suppose there's a good news story for Antrim Hurling, that they retained their status again, 224 to 217 over a gallant Offaly team. But I think at no stage did I feel, looking at the highlights here, that Antrim were every way threatened. I don't know if you saw the match at all, Kieran. Or...
Same, I saw the highlights as well, Mark. Yeah. I think looking at the highlights, Antrim were really impressive. You know, they were back to what they've been doing earlier in the league. You know, running the teams, runners off the shoulder. You know, just real attacking, good hurling, like very good hurling to watch. Offaly, like if you look at their defending, it's very, very loose. You know, I think Antrim made it look very easy when they got through for the goals. Should have had another one as well, obviously. But yeah, I think Antrim are just a couple of years ahead of what Offaly are. You know, I think really Offaly are probably maybe 3 or 4 years off to see any of the rewards of the work that's been done in the background. The minor team is supposed to be of real quality, and I think once you see these guys starting to come into the senior system, then I think you might see. But in their defence, to go from playing Chris Deering last year to playing at the top table, it's a jump that can't be done easy, So they'll gain a lot of experience in playing it. They'll know where they'll have to be at. But I think, to be fair, Antrim have been consistent in defeat. Haven't been far off. In all the matches they played. I think probably the Laois game, looking back, was probably their worst game. But and do it as well without their main man McManus, So I think that just shows how far ahead they were of Offaly, really.
They're a little bit further on in their development, it has to be said here, Kieran. And I suppose the highlights there from an Antrim perspective: Conal Gunning scores the 10 points, 9 from frees, deputised very well for McManus. And I suppose you have McNaughton and also Keelan Malloy, who I think is a fantastic player. I mean, they chipped in with early goals. Now, Offaly never went away. And I think Owen Cal has to be applauded here, 2-6 from the 2-17 for Offaly. But again, we've seen kind of with Offaly, they've died really badly in games in the second half. And I mean, the last 30 minutes, Antrim won 13 points to 1-3. I think that kind of tells your tale of the tape there a little bit. Now, Offaly were reduced to 13 players, and I know O'Connor for Antrim was sent off late with a black card and another card. But I think, to be perfectly fair, it's 3 weeks until the two meet in the Joe McDonagh, so that'll be interesting to see. But I think for Offaly, they've gotten a taster of where they need to go in terms of that, and it's no guarantee that Offaly will be getting into a knockout stages here. Just comparing that with Division 2 and see the Kerrys, the Downs, the Carlows, God, they've been beating each other up week in, week out. So I think for Offaly, they kind of know where they are. I think Rory has highlighted the minor team, the underage structures in place in Offaly. That's not going to take, that's not an overnight success here. So I think for Offaly, I think it's maybe a rebuild and maybe a question mark over Michael Fennelly. Will he commit again next season? Long term again to this Offaly project? Who knows? But I think for our Antrim...
But to jump, to be fair to them, to jump one division is a big ask for a team to adjust and do well. But to jump 2 divisions, really playing against, top teams, they're always going to be up against it, like Westmeath were last year. But I think, I don't think they'll be. I think like of Antrim, Kerry, and Westmeath, they have a lot more experience playing at a higher level. And I think come Joe McDonagh, these guys will be more prepared to deal with likes of Offaly, But as I said, they're probably a couple of years off. There's great work going on in the background, and they will see rewards eventually. There will be rewards from.
Oh, exactly. I totally agree there. I think it's a long-term project there. Michael Duigan's doing great work there in terms of the Offaly board. I mean, they're setting up the structures, centres of excellence, and really kind of building the underage structures, which is the key. And I mean, we'll have Rory on during the summer here, really kind of charting progress of the minors, under 20s. And we'll see what Offaly, and I think they'll emerge because they have been pretty good in the Forestall in recent years. So hopefully that talent gets nurtured and continues, which is great. But congratulations, Antrim. I think it's a good news story for them, and hopefully they can strike on a little bit more underage players coming in and really kind of developing there. I think Darragh Gleeson has really been doing a very good job there in Antrim, and congratulations to everyone in the Saffron County. Kieran, I suppose, do we want to kind of switch tack then a little bit? There's maybe an intercounty team or two announced there during the week. I suppose we can quickly delve into the Galway intercounty kind of panel here, Kieran. I mean, it was announced fairly quickly on Monday, I thought. But the initial reaction from my perspective was no real general surprises. But I suppose living around Oranmore, one of the key omissions was Niall Burke, who probably would have been a pivotal guy that came on in the 2017 All-Ireland Hurling final against Waterford. Didn't really get any game time from Shefflin, has been omitted, along with Sean Loftus, who's very highly regarded here in Galway, and also Adrian Toohey as well. Again, I don't know what thoughts you have on that panel, Kieran.
I suppose Shefflin really is probably looking more so to the youth, and I imagine it's not a 1 year plan or a 2 year plan. It's probably a 3 or 4 year plan. From what I've seen, they have some good young players there, and I suppose he'll nurture them and bring them along. And I presume he has a target in mind. I don't think they're going to be up there winning All-Irelands this year, but I think it definitely Yes, who's better to judge than the boys themselves up there? But yeah, I think the younger guys they do look good. Likes of Tom Monaghan really impressed this year. Nyland has caught the eye before this year, but young guy all the same. So I think they have the players. They always did. It's just a matter of getting the best of them.
Exactly, and I mean the announcement now, Dahi Burke is captain of the team, kind of speaks volumes there of the height of respect within the squad, and also Henry Shefflin of Dahi. I know we kind of said about Dahi and his kind of injury layoff, and I think he will be primed with that captaincy role. Joseph Cooney from Sarsfields as well as vice captain. I think it's quite an interesting kind of lineup, as you say, a very youth orientated squad.
With a good mix of experience as well. The only thing to point out is possibly a lack of leaders up front. In the forward line. I've mentioned it before, and I think come important championship games, is there someone there to pull them out of tight situations like Canning did for years? I think every team has one. You look at Tipperary, they always look to forward. Limerick, we've Keen Lynch, who usually pulls, does the magic things to get us out. Obviously, Waterford of Ozzie Gleeson, I don't think Waterford actually have a talisman, a marquee player that can do that. So I think that would be something if I was Sheffield to be looking at. Developing leaders in the team. And kind of in every line, and that comes with time. That comes with experience.
Exactly, and I just wonder if Sheffield will kind of launch maybe a few surprises. I'm just thinking in terms of maybe a TJ Brennan from Cairnbridge, very prominent with the University of Limerick in the Fitzgibbon Cup campaign. Quality hurler from Cairnbridge. There is a nice little spread of Cairnbridge players here, and that's indicative of the underage success that Cairnbridge have had. They got to the county final last year, got beaten by St Thomas's, but I think it really kind of shows Shefflin and his Galway-based management really have scoured in terms of the best youth talent around, and they've literally complemented it. I think Cathal Mannion, I think the hope here in Galway is he lights it up, but again, it's a very hard ask. You're trying to replace the god in Joe Canning here, as you say, Kieran, and I think that'll be an interesting selection, and I'll be very fascinated to see how they go against Wexford that first round in the Leinster Hurling Championship. I think it's going to be absolutely primed for both teams,
absolutely.
Which will be grand. Squad that kind of took note for me was the Limerick Under-20 hurling panel. Diarmuid Mullins is manager of the Under-20 hurling team, and to be perfectly fair, the round robins kind of starting out next Wednesday, April 6th. Limerick are hosting Clare at the TUS Gaelic Grounds at 7 p.m. and on April 20th, travelling to Parky Ring to face the reigning All-Ireland champions Cork. Now, the Under-20 squad has been named. My God, Kieran Collins, there's no pressure here on the management and Diarmuid Mullins here, given some of the selections here. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a strong panel. There's a lot of, if you look at, players playing who are on the Limerick senior setup, you forget these lads are young guys, that they're still under 20s, I think the Cork game, I think the expectation on people will be the Cork, or the team to beat. And I suppose that will be the main test for him, when you say it was April 20th. So I think you'll have a fair idea where you're at after that game, against Cork, because they're, littered with stars. I suppose really we saw that last year. And that's what a lot. You might have some of the minors who won on that 20 team as well, So I think you'll have a fair idea where you're at after that game.
Yeah, it's a good kind of representation across the county. I think here, to be perfectly honest with you, Kieran, I mean, most divisionals are being well represented here. I'm kind of looking at Adam Fitzgerald from Temple Glentoy, for instance, West Limerick. There's a smattering of players from Mungret St Paul's. Colin O'Neill, obviously, Craig Cora manager. You have a good representation of Doon, who've been fairly prominent in underage ranks there as well. I see Evan O'Leary. Ahan has featured there as well. Again, it's a very, very good panel overall here. Ronan Lyons as well. And also Aidan O'Connor, I think. This is a guy that Rory had highlighted to us in this podcast, a guy that is lighting it up in third level, whatever he's seen. So it'll be very interesting to see how these guys really go in terms of that panel. But I think it's a strong panel. Colin Coughlin as well from Ballybrown. My God, there's a few of them already.
Colin O'Neill.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few senior All-Ireland medal in the back pocket already, which is unreal. But best of luck anyway to the panel anyway. I know Diarmuid Mullins, he has Richie Flannery, Tommy Quaid, John Mescal, absolutely rock solid coaching staff behind him. Also, Brian Murray has joined the backroom staff this year's goalkeeping coach. Leo Morrison, strength and conditioning. Won't be fun wadding there. Neil Clifford, liaison officer. Pa Keane looking after stats. And Declan Gillan, kitman. And Brian Moore being the physio. And I think that's a very solid unit there. And I suppose on behalf of myself and Kieran anyway, Limerick men, hopefully all goes well for the Limerick under-20s. Kieran, it's been a lengthy one tonight, but I think we've gone through plenty. I think next week we'll review the National Hurling League and maybe have a bit of a sneaky peek at the Munster and Leinster Hurling Championships. But until then, Kieran, thanks very much.
No bother, Mark. See you again.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.